Hello, hello. Echo, echo. Okay. Hello, everyone. Jeremy Vaeni here. I guess I should look at the camera. Hello, everyone. Jeremy Vaeni here. I have no evidence that anyone's even watching this yet. In fact, all evidence points to not. So, what does this say? Oh, okay. There are some people. All right. Well, welcome to another Wise Ask. I did not walk up to this building, so even though I am hot, there's a fair chance I won't completely sweat through this shirt. That's good. But I am hot and sweaty, so I'm just preparing you. I'm preparing for a hot, sweaty mess, man, as I go through yet another email I got from a reader / YouTube watcher person. Let me know if you cannot hear me. That would be good, because it'd be bad if I'm just recording and then, you gotta read lips. It's not good for most people. But while I wait for people to pile in, let me just share with you just sort of a, life update, Kundalini update, something. So, as you may know, if you've heard me bitch about it before, my wife and I, we have 3 cats, one of whom is Gracie, who is old, and she sleeps with us in the bed, and then she jumps down all night, pretty much from around 3 p.m. until we get up, whenever that is, like every hour, to go get food, which we have to get for her. We don't just have food lying around, because this is Hawaii and you don't want ants. So, we got to get up, we got to get her food, or we got to make her food, or she's got to go to the bathroom. If we don't make her food, she'll rah at the top of her lungs, and then she'll start drinking water, and then she'll throw up, and then we're just going to have to get up and clean that. So there is no scenario where we're not getting up all night, because old cat needs old cat things to happen. So a few days ago, I had it, and I just was like, and I just started like yelling in bed because I'm dying. I'm getting no sleep. And I have a hard time getting back to sleep after I get up. Like my wife, Carol, she can immediately just conk out, but I can't. And it takes me about as long as it takes her to meaning Gracie, to lick herself clean and then get up and go get more food again in an hour. It takes me about that long before I start getting back to sleep. So by the time I start to nod off again, she's up. And it just sucks. So I've had it, or I had it a number of days ago. And so after my little outburst, the next day or the next night, the Kundalini energy decided, which it doesn't often do, but it does sometimes, decided it wanted to come alive right around the time I went to bed. So I just let it play out. And I told Carol, I was like, this thing is doing stuff. So if you feel the bed moving around, that's just me. And it seemed to be concentrating on my spine, and then my, I guess it would be my right side. My side. But a lot of my lower spine. And before I went to bed, I had this unusual pang in the gut. When you get that little you're just happy, satiated, happy, joyful, that kind of thing. Haven't felt that in a long time. Just from nothing, out of nowhere. But I was feeling that, and it's a physical sensation, So that, coupled with this, coming alive and doing this, I started thinking, oh God, what if that slit opens up, where I had the big I am experience and a couple of other experiences. What if that happens? And then Gracie jumps up to get food, and then Carol's like, Jer, go get the cat or whatever. What would happen? Would I be like, Jeremy's not here? What would become of that? But nothing became of it. Gracie actually didn't jump up, funny enough. She actually slept through until her, middle of the night. Because usually, once we go right to bed, she jumps up, usually twice. and then we can sleep for a few hours, and then the fun begins. But she didn't. She let us sleep for a little while, for a few hours. And that was great. I'm just checking to see if anyone's in the chat. So she let us sleep, and I don't know, nothing became of it except, I don't know what. Like, I slept really well. I was really happy. I wasn't angry at Gracie anymore. Supernaturally made to feel better somehow. I don't know. And then I think it was the next night also, the energy wanted to come alive again, and it did some stuff, and I didn't have a feeling in my gut this time. I didn't have any feeling about what was going on. I don't know what was going on. Movements and stuff. So I don't know. But I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there because it seems to be perhaps a ramping up of this energy wanting to do things. Or maybe it really is related to, like, okay, Jer, you're dying here from this cat, so we're going to make this painless for you, whoever we are. Right? The royal we, me. I don't know. But again, I implore you, if you are listening to me right now on the YouTubes, let me know in the chat if you can hear this. Otherwise, I'm going to tell a cat story again, and you're not going to like it. All right, that's that. Is there anything else? Oh, you know what? I think I'm on Where Did the Road Go with Soraya Asgaff, I think is his full name. That might be this weekend. We recorded that a while back. I know he had posted it to his Patreon members, which I guess he does a week in advance. So that might actually go up on YouTube tomorrow, the non-Patreon version. So look forward to that. If you like listening to me gripe about people I love in ufology, literally just selling down the river people I actually enjoy, this one's for you. That's not all I do. I also bitch about other things. So, all right. Chat. Is there anyone in the chat? Can anyone just type something in the chat saying that you can hear this? Why can't anyone just do that? I'm not even asking you for money. I'm not even asking you to go to ko-fi.com/jve. That's ko-fi.com/jve, also pronounced coffee.com, to, toss a coin to your bitcher. No, I'm not asking for that. I'm just asking, can you hear me? But also, if you can hear me, go to ko-fi.com/jve and see if you can't donate a couple of bucks, Why not? Spirituality and money together again. Okay. All right, I'm going to keep going with this as if you can hear me, because I know this is a surprise live stream. I don't really expect a whole bunch of people to show up, but they usually tend to show up in the middle of it, so it would suck if I was recording and not recording sound. That's all I'm saying. And then it's your fault. Those of you who are here on time, it's your fault. But I shall go on. I received an email, and within the email, permission, I guess, or the sort of not really request, but suggestion that I could use this for YouTube. So I will use this for YouTube. I won't do what I did last time and read the whole thing first and then read it again, because it is long and it's not convoluted like the last one was. So I don't need to make the point of don't send me convoluted emails. So this has questions as it goes along. I'll just read up to the questions and then I will, to the best of my ability, answer them. What's this here? First, okay. First I must stare at my screen. Yes, staring. What is this here? Chat disconnected. Please wait while we try to reconnect you. I'm just going to type hello in the chat and see if anyone responds. Okay, well, I seem to be in the chat, so the chat seems to be working. Hopefully my microphone's working. I guess that's the important point. But I will redo this again if I have to. Oh, yes. I'm going to go on, as I claimed that I was going to do a minute ago. The email starts thus. I've been listening to you for several weeks, and I am 80% through reading Urgency by Jeremy Vaeni. Ting. What I understand up to now is that there is no path to enlightenment because the self, the consciousness that would be looking for that, is just an illusion that's a side effect of how the physical brain works. I think this infers there is no legitimate soul or individual consciousness except the one global quote-unquote consciousness. God. Did I get that right? No, not exactly. I mean, what I'm saying is, good enough. Sure. This word illusion is the hang-up, right? Like, yes and no. Physically, we are illusions. But it's what we've got. It's what we are. We are what you would call necessary illusions. So it can be no other way. It is choicelessly this way. Formless awareness in simply being is being all things. And so in some sense, they're illusions, but they're also real. So the illusion is, essentially formless awareness is creating forms that are creating formless awareness. And we can then create things. So the brain is projecting you. Yes, the brain, you are thought. Thought is brain cells. But the sort of conglomerate of us, there is this thing called mind, right? The human stream of mind, the collective man. And so, yes, you are a projection of the brain, but you are also a projection, I guess you would say, of that stream of consciousness. So it's not individual, it's just representational, if that makes sense. Like we think we're autonomous beings, but we're not. We're representations of that stream of consciousness. And if we were truly autonomous, which means, individuals, which means whole, we would in fact be truth alive. We would have the first person aspect of truth, or quote unquote God, whatever you want to say, as the self. We would have that timeless being, the oneness-y thing, projecting through us into time, into the two-ness-y thing, non-duality into duality. The self-aware aspect of that would be our self-aware aspect. That's clear, right? I don't know that that's clear, but maybe I'll clear it up as I go along here. Boop, boop, boop. So this person goes on to say, there are a few things that bother me. One, there is no path to enlightenment, ... except as ironically pointed out in the Wise Ask, Why Aren't I Enlightened Yet episode, for the death of self, or quote unquote, turning yourself off. So, okay, there's no path to enlightenment except what I pointed out in that previous Wise Ask episode about the death of self or turning yourself off. That's not a path. There is no you turning you off. So that's not the ironic part. I think what I was saying in that was, ironically, or it seems to be ironic, that I'm saying there's no path, and yet I was talking about, but you could also do this, which is to lessen your psychological baggage, or wean it down by doing positive negation on your issues until you hit the point of revelation of like, oh, I'm not autonomous. I am what Jeremy just said a minute ago, a representation of the stream. We're all in this together. This whole stream of sorrow it's just what we do until we don't anymore, until we figure it out here. But it's funny because I'm posting my old Paratopia shows online with my old broadcast partner Jeff Ritzman, and I don't listen to them all the way through when I repost them, but I'll skip around just to make sure the audio's okay. And I happen to skip to a part where, what is this, from 2012? So however many, 12 years ago, whatever that is, where I was talking about this, actually, about, what? I've lost my train of thought. That's what happens when you're timeless. No, that's a joke. Where I was talking about, that the positive negation, the usefulness of it, is that perhaps it can get you to a place where you can better hear in the way that one needs to hear and understand so that it computes that you are the thing in the way of that which you seek. And so if you hear this enough times, you may get it intellectually and you may think you get it. And you may have this experience of having negated yourself out of brain self into heart self, out of false autonomy of the rational thinker or the objective person into the interconnectivity of all things. And that is so enlightening and healthy, or enlightenment seeming and healthy, that you may mistake that for the whole thing. And you may say, okay, I've got it, until you realize one day, oh wait, I'm the guy, as I did, I'm the guy who gets it. I'm the one who why else am I still reading books about this stuff? Why am I still immersed in this if I have fully gotten it? Oh, because I've just adopted a new self-identity as that person who gets it. And part of the reason that I did that is because truth does flow through you as wisdom, as a second person experience. I've talked about this in other videos and in my book Urgency, the first person, second person, third person perspectives. So, what would third person truth be? Probably a commandment or a text written down and given to you and said, here, read this. A second person would be like it coming to you as if, your own aha moment insight. And first person is the identity as the consciousness that is saying that. And so I was in second person mode, thinking I was in first person mode, until I realized, oh no, I'm just second person mode. I mean, that's really what happened. And in that moment turned me off. Now, do I have to have gone through all of that to hit that? Maybe not, but I think it's probably helps because what we're talking about is sort of the ego dissolving, the brain seeing the necessity of dissolving the ego. And I think if you're too built up, you're not going to really be able to get that in any fruitful way. Nevertheless, neither of those are a path. Just one may be helpful. And this gets to the question that Tom Cheetham has had about doing iboga. For someone like him who was raised, as he says, his mom would shun and poo-poo anyone who believed anything religiously or spiritually. It's all garbage. Atheism is the way to go. Rationality, materialism. Brought up that way, became a scientist and all that. But now he's at the point where, the truth, the other parts of him want to be expressed. And so is it possible to go do psychedelics like iboga enough to where it sort of mellows him, I guess, calms him down to where he could have this experience? And I was saying it's a diversion, and ultimately it is a diversion. It's not as in terms of being a path to this. And especially if you've set it up in your head, like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a boga, and then this is going to happen, and then I will be ready. It's like, no, that is the way that you perpetually not be ready, by perpetually readying yourself. However, if you didn't set that up that way, if you just accidented your way into psychedelics, could it possibly do that for you? Make you looser in that way? Maybe. I mean, maybe. Because I'm not saying positive negation is the the only thing you can do. I'm just saying I think it's a quick fix to lessening your psychological baggage. But more than that, obviously, can bring you, when you have the big aha revelation, in back to your natural, healthy self, where you are recontextualized, right? So you are recontextualized. You're no longer the top of the pyramid scheme of consciousness, Like, no, we're all in this together and we're all equal. All beings, not even just humans. So I hope somewhere in there was an answer. All right. He goes on, or she. I'm going to guess he, because some of the things that he, I think, says later, I don't think a woman would say. But you tell me. I think a woman would be less prone to saying. We'll get to those as I burp. So he says, here's what I'm thinking. You told us that you developed Kundalini after reading Krishnamurti, but a lot of other stuff had happened before that, a lot of other supernatural events. I feel it's not guaranteed that you triggered that in yourself or that anyone else could. I triggered... I'm not sure if he means the Krishnamurti stuff or the supernatural stuff. I'm assuming the Krishnamurti stuff. Or the Kundalini. Oh, the Kundalini. Okay. So I feel it's not guaranteed that you triggered the Kundalini, I think he's saying, in yourself or that anyone else could. No one else could trigger the Kundalini, and neither could I. It is literally the lack of self-involvement that triggers or makes room for Kundalini to be the case. And ultimately, what is Kundalini in this sense? Kundalini is truth, essentially the energy of truth not coming at you or in you or as you, just in terms of wisdom, but in other ways, physically, psychically, however that pans out. That's another thing to get into, I guess, but okay. He goes on, correlation, not causality. Have your ideas, the chapter in urgency that is talking to the brain, had an effect on anyone else? So in urgency, I do a lot of babbling up front about the spiritual stuff, and then I say, now we're going to redo all of that as if I'm talking to your brain, and then I try to redo it as if I am your brain. Basically, I try to hypnotize you and then take over your mind. But has it worked? Do you know anyone else who's been, quote unquote, awakened in a similar way? No. I don't know whether it's worked or not, but I know. The only thing I've heard from people is that they had sort of psychic awakenings or some like paranormal stuff that seemed to happen when they were reading it. And I attribute that to anytime you go deeply into something, it is quite possible that stuff in the room goes haywire. That when the shallow sense of self, to sort of bastardize Carl Jung, gives way to the self of the depths, that can dredge up. What it can do is actually call attention to the fact that the laws of physics aren't laws. It shows the illusion of the illusion in some way, but it can look like other beings or things, I don't know, are paying attention to you or reacting to you. And maybe they are and maybe they aren't. But I just know that I've had deep conversations and I've had deep moments of thought. In fact, famously, on Paratopia, when Jeff and I interviewed Colin Andrews about crop circles in a surprising way, because otherwise, crop circles are kind of hot garbage on the level that we tend to see. But what Colin Andrews was talking about was deeper than that. And literally when we were all tuned in to the depth of it, like the bank of computers in Colin's room went down, shut down one after the other. And a whole bunch of stuff happened to us over the course of a week or a couple of weeks, including me becoming a vegetarian, I think, as a result of that interview. I know it's weird, but it's all stuff that we've talked about on Paratopia and elsewhere, so I'm not going to retread it, except to say that it can be just having a deep conversation about deep things legitimately, which means being open, can cause weird things to happen. And I think especially in conversation with people, because if you're going to be in conversation, you got to be projecting out here. You got to be sort of the persona of the shallows or whatever you want to call that. But you're having a conversation that goes deeper than that. And I think this causes a friction because you can't quite change over to the other character. So there becomes this trickster-like phenomena in that liminal state from the friction that can cause things to happen. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But no, in terms of like, has anyone woken up from reading my book? Not that I know of. And I didn't expect that when I wrote it. I thought maybe if I'm lucky, when I am dead and buried, one person somewhere, maybe, like I think that's the odds. Or else people would have heard Krishnamurti and woken up. People would have heard Buddha and woken up, or whoever else in between for all those thousands of years. Because one of the things that I talk about on this show is the need to articulate this as accurately as possible for people to hear it. But because in my mind anyway, it's almost like, doing a combination lock. If you can get that right combination of words, abracadabra, you unlock you. But it's also true, and even more true, that our defense mechanisms are such that we really don't want to hear those words. And so maybe it doesn't even matter how accurate you are, because here we are thousands of years later of having heard similar things or the same thing, and it always gets bastardized. And very few people do, quote unquote, wake up out of the human stream. Now, we wake up to the depths of the stream. We can go into the stream. We can have all sorts of experiences that are set up there that are quote-unquote enlightenment experiences that you get through practice and repetition and understanding koans and prayer and there are all sorts of ways to that. But what I am suggesting to you is that is not truth. Those are sort of carnival ride, virtual reality versions of the stream of truth from, a few people having woken up, having spoken it, and then having had that organized, apparently. So that was problem number one, or things that bothered him. Thing that bothers him number two is the death of self even desirable? Isn't it going to happen anyway, automatically, at physical death? Let's say we're just a dream in the head of a sleeping God. Would God want human subjects to go, quote unquote, off program? How do you know for certain that humans should wake up and do anything like stop wars and clean the environment instead of just being the way they are, quote unquote, being the way they are and letting the program go through? So before I go on, let me just sort of try to tackle this. Is the death of self even desirable? It cannot be gotten through desire, so probably not. I mean, to me, this is like saying, a child saying to an adult, do I even need to grow up? Why should I grow up? Well, you're going to grow up. Or you're going to die. Like except here we're saying you should die. The death of self. Again, disclaimer, when I'm talking about death of self, I'm not talking about suicide or murder or physical death at all. I'm talking about egoic death while the body remains alive. And further disclaimer, this is never going to turn into some cult shit where I then turn the tides and mean that. Okay. Not that you're implying that. I'm just throwing that out there because I get worried sometimes that I've seen enough of these documentaries on cults where they start off talking about something and then what they really mean is drink the Kool-Aid. And that's never going to be what I mean or what truth is about. So never drink Kool-Aid, I guess. Kool-Aid stocks have just gone down. So isn't it going to happen at physical death? Well, this gets into the thing about us being part of the human stream, or if you want to say the universal consciousness. No, I don't think so. I don't think. I mean, I haven't died physically yet, but I think that there are a couple of choices here. Either there's nothing when the wave crashes back down into the ocean, in which case, sure. But the other is that, no, the self does go on, as you're going to talk about in a little bit, in some sort of illusory heaven or even reincarnation. I mean, essentially the illusion, sticking with the illusion. Ultimately what we want is continuity. So do we get what we want when we die? Do we get some sort of continuity? Because if we do, then it ain't truth. It's still, like, we've heard from ghosts. Hell, you've probably read Seth Speaks. I think I talk about that on Where Did the Road Go? I think this weekend. And there's nothing being said there that isn't wish fulfillment. We create our own reality and all that stuff, which isn't like white privilege stuff from back in the day. And it's nothing that you couldn't have thought of on your own or have read already in a religious text somewhere or something. So, wash, rinse, repeat for every ghost that's ever been channeled or spoken through a medium or anything, or an alien or a Bigfoot, whatever it is that speaks to us. They're not telling us anything we don't already know because they're from the field of the known. And so if we die physically and end up in a field of the known, a near-death experience might show this, then have we died at all? We've just transitioned into another state of ourselves, and that's not good enough. That's not the whole full expression of what a human being is. But, nevertheless, even if you scratch all that, even if all of that is nonsense, to me, it's like humanity, at least westernized humanity, we believe that we are evolving and natural evolution is over. We'll take it from here, right? We'll do the evolving ourselves from here with our knowledge and our know-how. And we're not going anywhere, right? We're still doing the war. We're still destroying the earth, all of that. How do we not do that? How do we be happy and contented being living beings? If we can't get to it through this so-called evolution, this education, these processes and whatever we've set up. Perhaps we need to realize that while the physical may evolve, the mental or the psycho-spiritual, or however you want to coin it, needs to wake up. So I guess it's sort of similar to something Ken Wilber might say, growing up and waking up, growing up versus waking up. You need to grow up, you need, from childhood to adult, and then you need to wake up into the full expression of what a human being is. And if you don't, then we do what we're doing now, which is kill ourselves off with a smile. Blame everyone else. Blame the politicians we vote for. Blame the corporations that we patronize and give money to. I mean, think about how insane that is. We're literally killing the earth off. We're literally filling our testes with plastic right now, and our lungs, and women don't have testes, hopefully, or some do, transitioning women, you know what I mean. I'm just saying, we're full of crap, is what we're full of, and we're doing it to ourselves, and we're constantly either just denying that this is happening at all, or putting it off as it's just natural, or saying, some evil booger man out there is doing it, but that booger man just happens to be, again, the very people that we are voting for and the very people who we are paying to pollute us. So we are doing it to ourselves, and there's no getting around that. if you don't care about that, might I suggest you're a sociopath? Okay, let's see. So let's just say we're a dream in the head of a sleeping God. Let's not say that. I'm not saying that. God isn't sleeping. I mean, this word God, I know I use it in the book, but when I say it out loud, I realize all the ramifications of saying the word God. And while I love stealing words back from the people who have bastardized them, but let's use it. If we're saying that we are God, we're saying that God is being. That formless awareness is simply being, not sleep. Awake, really, alive. Just in being alive is being all things. Because when you peel it back, what you're saying is there's this nothingness. And this nothingness is sentient. And sentient nothingness at its base is being. What is it being? Multiples, because nothing can't be more nothing. So if nothing's being, nothing must be, well, one. And that one is, manifesting all of these, what we call illusions or appearances, but they are and they aren't. They are what the oneness is, being expressed in multiple. So it would be like if you shattered glass. The difference is, the glass shards are the glass, but the difference is there is no separation really between the glass pane and the shatter. So maybe if you just crack it a bit and it spiders out. How about that? So now it looks like there are differences. Now it looks like there are differences in the glass because you've got a spidering crack. But there aren't differences. It's still all the glass. But there are differences in the sense that now there is the appearance of shape, size, measurement, and then from there judgment, and then go down the list until eventually the glass is sentient. And this is how we create AI. You're welcome, everyone. All right, let's see. So, would God want human subjects to go off program? Well, again, there is no God separate from humanity. So, and there is no program. There just is. There is no program. There is no time unfolding. That is an illusion from within time. If you step out of time, you look at the painting and you go, oh, that's interesting. Within time, within the painting, we can only know what we know. We're like characters running around. We think that there's space and measurement and all the stuff, but there's really just the painting, and it's not a program doing anything. It's really, the illusion is the illusion of doing. The illusion that things can be any different. The illusion of choice within the painting. The only free will choice we have is to see this so deeply that we step out of the false free will, the false all of that, and wake up. I mean, that's it. So then goes on to say, so how do you know for certain that the humans should wake up and do anything like stop wars and clean the environment instead of just being the program that they're going through? I mean, it's an odd question to me because there are certain things that are questions and concerns and horror suppositions even that come from one side of the coin. When you're on the other side when the coin is apparent and there are no sides of the coin, everything is apparent. And there's no question. There is no, how do you know? It will be apparent. All of this, clarity is clarity, right? So there's no confusion. There's no, I don't know. There's no, I'm not making a decision about this. It's apparent. And so it's not even about stopping wars and cleaning the environment. At that point, you're no longer at war with the environment or your neighbors, period. The war has ended for you. So the waking up is the stopping. That's just it. And then he goes on and says, are the wolves in the forest supposed to wake up and turn into vegetarians? And what would the plants think of this? Or is that just for humans, and why humans? Well, no, wolves and all other critters that we know of, I shouldn't say critters, but you know what I mean, beings, are perfectly expressing what they are. Wolves are perfectly expressing the wolf. They need not wake up and become vegetarians. And you're right, what would the vegetables think of this? So I became vegetarian, like I said, due to a podcast episode. I didn't become vegetarian because suddenly, like, meat is murder and all of that. I think what you're getting to in that question, at least partly, is that we got to eat something, and that alive thing isn't going to like it very much. And it doesn't matter if it's a plant or an animal. And I agree with that. I think that's where gratefulness and giving thanks and, I mean, I don't see it this way, but there are indigenous cultures who do, and I would hope that the reason they do is because they know something of this through real relationship with these beings around them who they have to eat, that there is the sense of them having given their life for you. Now, whether that is literally true or not, I think that is where that comes from. Like, the idea is no one wants to kill and hurt another being, but that is what we do. And so I just think, the buffer between that is thankfulness, ultimately. Thank you for your sacrifice, and I'm sorry that I have to do this, but that's what we got to do, Wolves don't have to do that because they get it. They're too busy eating. Or is this just for humans, and why humans? Well, because humans, again, I mean, I don't know if it's just for humans, but I know that humans, that's all I know really, we're not living in our full expression. So that's why humans have to wake up, not turn into vegetarians necessarily, but that's why we have to wake up, because we're not human yet. We're still larval. And again, I've used this analogy 8 million times. If what we are is a butterfly and we don't chew through the cocoon, we just set up HD TVs and computers in the cocoon and call it a day, eventually that's going to collapse on us and we're going to suffocate and die, because that is the repercussion of not chewing your way out. So do we have forever for that? I don't think so. I think time's up. He says, I feel that whether the earth eventually becomes unlivable due to pollution is ... irrelevant. I'm sorry. Before that says, in an infinitely large universe, billions of years old, created by God, which I feel that whether the earth eventually becomes unlivable due to pollution is irrelevant. I mean, most planets are not even livable in the first place. Surely God could spin another virtual machine on the God cloud when this one crashes. And this is the thing that I think women wouldn't necessarily say. Simply because they give birth and they aren't that crass. This idea, I mean, where do I begin with this? First of all, you've read Urgency, right? You're asking me questions because you've read Urgency. Where in Urgency did I say that there is a God creating anything? That's not me. I never said that. I don't believe that. It is not the case. So that's problem number one on that level. But so God's not creating all of this. Look, you are life and life is you. If you don't feel anything about that, that's kind of the problem, right? I don't know what to tell you there. To be like, well, God can just churn out another one is like, well, okay, so a serial killer could show up at your door right now as you're watching this and carry you off to the kill room in his basement. Should I not care about that? Because God's just going to make another, someone's going to have a baby. Babies being born every day. Who cares what happens to you? Probably you care what happened to you, right? There's more to life than just you, right? Like, there are other beings, and they don't want to just, like, be killed because you think that God, A, exists, and B, will just create another planet full of stuff. For what? For you to kill? Like, what are you talking about? I really, this part really bothers me. Let's just keep killing the planet because most planets aren't livable in the first place. God can just do another planet. I mean, this is like the laziest, most American thinking I can think of. Maybe you're from Australia, though. I don't know. Rupert Murdoch is from Australia, so it could be something like that. 3, I've noticed a reply from you on YouTube dismissing a person's belief in My Big Toe. That is My Big Theory of Everything by Tom Campbell. And you dismiss many other beliefs about consciousness in your podcast, which is fine, I guess. If something is surely true, the other things have to surely be false. I didn't read Tom Campbell, and my brain hurts just reading a summary. Fair enough. But I did read Robert Monroe. Did you dismiss all that stuff as the brain trying to fool these people? So Tom Campbell came to his big theory of everything, which is essentially that everything is a field of information. It's not physical, it's a field of information. And he came to this through meditation and through out-of-body experiences at the Monroe Institute and whatever. So you're asking, do you dismiss all of that stuff as the brain trying to fool these people? No. So when I do these, like He's So Vaeni, for instance, YouTube videos on spirituality and stuff, some people I'm dismissive of at a level of they are lying or hoaxing, some that they are just wrong, some that they are delusional, and some that they have had a real experience in the depths of consciousness, as we were talking about, but they're mistaking whatever they're learning there for reality. And it's just rabbit hole after rabbit hole. And you have to take these on an individual basis. And maybe I do a poor job of articulating the differences. And so you think I'm just poo-pooing consciousness on my podcast and people's beliefs and stuff, or dismissing them for all the same reason, and I'm not. And so I would say that Robert Monroe and Tom Campbell, I would give them the benefit of the doubt that they've had these experiences. I just don't believe that the experiences are as ironclad as they may. Although I did watch a Tom Campbell video and I read the comments, and someone was saying that Robert Monroe actually came to different conclusions about the nature of the universe than Campbell did. And then, of course, along come the Campbell sycophants to be like, that's because Monroe didn't go as deep as Tom did and learn the things that Tom learned and whatever. So I don't dismiss that as the brain fooling these people. I dismiss that as the universe fooling these people. The self, yeah, I mean, there's no differentiation here in some sense between you and the universe. But the wanting to remain as we are and not leave the stream of human consciousness for truth, but wanting to believe that we have, or to take from it to bring to the stream, I think the universe will accommodate you in that. And that's what they're experiencing. More on that in a second. It says, I am not sure that the OBEs, out-of-body experiences, and the related consciousness experiments, Monroe, and by extension Campbell, I'm assuming he meant performed, might be a word missing, are necessarily incompatible with oneness, or at least what I understood of it. While they're not incompatible with what I just said, I don't know what you've understood of it. So he says, my understanding of Monroe's work is that he finds there is a physical body and then a separate consciousness, which he calls the second body, instead of a soul. Over the course of his books, he figures out that there is a series of quote-unquote buffer ring worlds between the physical world and the fully spiritual world. These are not physical rings around the earth, it's a figure of speech. One of the rings contains the belief systems, so a person who dies might be going to a Christian heaven, but it's actually some kind of fake reality set up by themselves, I think, to ease transition, and then they may move on, but he doesn't know where. The dead souls may meet long-dead loves, but it is suggested they may be an illusion, perhaps generated by the universe. I mean, I'm not going to split hairs here. Roughly, I think this could be true. Not the thing about rings and whatever, but how the afterlife may work when it's not really, when it's an extension of the continuation of you. Okay, Monroe always wanted to explore further, but he believes there is some kind of quote-unquote home he thinks he needs to go to. When he gets there, third book I think, there is nothing there. It's another kind of fake world with a repetitive cloud pattern and background music. This is funny, but I did not make this up, and it was published 10 years after the release of the NES, which I think he's saying is the Nintendo Entertainment System. So I think he's like comparing this to like Super Mario Brothers, which is hilarious if that's true. He figures out he can't go home, or it's not the right thing to do, before all of his incarnation soul, whom he meets and talks to meet up at the end of time or end of his mission and leave altogether. He figures out he can't go home, or it's not the right thing to do, before, I guess, he meets everyone that he is at the end of time and end of his mission. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what his mission is. I don't know about all of that. That's all a little too far-fetched to me. But by the way, the repetitive clouds and stuff was there before the NES. If you think about the Flintstones, Fred and Barney, or Wilma and Betty walking down the street, and you just see the same house or the same clouds or whatever going by in the background over and over again. Anyway, I feel this isn't necessarily incompatible with oneness, because Monroe's world is that the consciousness outlives the body, but these second bodies seem to have their own evolution and lifespans. In other words, after they're done doing their tour of duty, they could dissipate into nothingness. It just adds a few more truck stops. But what's the point of that? Perhaps all a series of mini consciousness collapsing into bigger ones at every level until there is only one. That's a mighty big org chart. See, this is again where I think like that's nice and imaginal, but I don't, there is no time in that. Again, the big pulled back picture, let's say there's heavens and hells and reincarnation, and then there's you. And let's say you experience yourself living a life in the, 1500s. You die, you go to heaven for a little while, then you're born, and there's amnesia, and you don't know it, but this is still you. All of that is still you. If someone teaches you about reincarnation, or if you have some experience of your past life, or if you have an experience of pre-birth, whatever, isn't the easiest thing to think about that, like you're saying, there's an evolution here going on or something. But if you step out of time, you see it's all a line, And I've used the analogy of, if you've ever seen one of those, like a motel sign, where it's like light bulb, light bulb, light bulb, like bup, 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 and then an arrow. If you're at the tip of that arrow, you may look back at those bulbs going off and think that those were past moments, past lives, personal history, other history. That's you moving. But if you step out of it, if you're not in the light bulbs, you see that it's just a picture. It's just a moving bunch of light bulbs. And there's no program there that is happening. It's just outside of that's what they do. That's what the light bulbs are doing. But within it, you can form all sorts of meaning, and you can imagine all sorts of ways why this is happening and how you're moving forward. In fact, you're at the head of an arrow, so of course you're at the precipice of the future. But you're not. You're just a blinking sign. So how do you stop being a blinking sign? This is what I'm concerned with. So you say, how do you feel about the out-of-body stuff in near-death experiences? Do you dismiss them, perhaps as hallucinations or self-delusions? You had your supernatural experiences about the great big universe, but these guys also say they had their own. Well, interestingly, Tom Campbell says there's no difference between remote viewing and out-of-body experiences. He says that they're the difference between an out-of-body experience and a remote viewing experience is the belief of the person doing it. So essentially, you're not going anywhere. And if that's true, that would be really interesting to me. Like that actually makes sense to me, because I've often thought, like, what is an out-of-body experience? I mean, as far as I know, I haven't had one. I had the big I am thing where I was seemingly flushed out of my body and then seemingly at the end came slowly back in. But in thinking about it later, like, and then what am I flushed out into and coming back from? The self-identity of nothingness, becoming and being all things. So that's not actually a place I'm going to out of body. And thinking about it later, the coming and going is what time does. There has to be a location where I'm leaving and coming, because time dictates that. Measurement dictates that. Sense of location dictates that, right? So it's the illusion of coming and going through a slit in the spine. Is that really what's happening? Or is that actually superfluous? It could have been out the top of my head. I don't know. But likewise, I've also had a period of time where I was having these, what you could say are out of body or remote viewing, either one type experiences of, I've talked about this, just for a few seconds, of seeing from the point of view, like a bird's eye view of a meadow. Just as if I were a camera in a tree and seeing a meadow. The end. Seeing from the point of view of a sidewalk where you're seeing feet and bicycles and cars go by. Can't move, can't hear anything, no sound quality, no ability to move. But just as if I'm planted there seeing that for as long as, 15 seconds, 20 seconds. Visionary things, right? And then seeing through people's eyes. Also, seeing through a military guy being yelled at by his superior across a table in a dark room, a child, mom and dad giving them cereal before going to school, through the eyes of people, having that experience. I've also talked about, back in college, before any of this spiritual shenanigans stuff, of this gal, my friend's girlfriend, who I couldn't stand. When we were all in a store together, she walked in front of me, and I doubled over because I actually felt, and I knew that I felt, her interiority. I felt what it was like to be her, and I don't know exactly what happened to her to make her as awful and annoying as she was. I don't know, but I knew emotionally how it impacted her and how it felt to be her. And in that moment had great compassion for her and couldn't see her as an enemy anymore because I knew her, So that's a type of that, in a way. Now, is any of that out of body? I mean, the visions, I wasn't asleep. I was awake. I knew they were happening. I knew where my body was. No, I wasn't out of my body. Would someone call that an out-of-body experience? This is my problem with out-of-body, is anyone I've ever known who said they've had an out-of-body, not everyone, I shouldn't say that, but anyone I've gone into great depth of conversation with about it has not really been able to tell me that it was that they left their body, even though they're calling it out-of-body. So to me, Tom Campbell might be right here on this count, that they perhaps they're the same, and it's just whatever you think is going on. You're just putting words to this visionary, being able to see through the eyes of someone else, putting yourself in their shoes, quite literally, for a bit. So he's saying no one actually loses their body. I actually jotted this down. So if what he's saying is correct, then I had experiences like these. But then the question is, of course, in seeing through other people's eyes, who I don't know, or seeing from the bird's eye view or the point of view of the sidewalk, or the one time that I saw a gray alien in a round metallic corridor who came in a hopping motion up to my point of view. I was sort of at the top of this corridor looking down, kind of the bird's eye view there. And as soon as this sort of little hopping up and down walk motion got right to in front of where my eye would be, turned and faced me and had sort of a hostility to it, like I didn't belong there, until I dissolved, until I went away and the vision was over. Now, did any of these things happen, or is this all imaginal? I can't prove it. I don't know that these people exist. I don't know what that actually represents, do I? I can't really say. It could just belong to a higher order of imagination. I don't know. So, are there impersonal imaginative events that don't derive from the person experiencing them? Not dreams, not hallucinations, but something else that seems real and isn't? Don't know. But I do know that it's still within the field of the known. That's the problem. It's still within the stream of human consciousness. And again, truth is not. Truth is not derived from that stream. It is its own stream. And so no theory of how reality works can contain it, because theories, such as the big toe, only explain or try to explain the known. Reality is not fully understandable from the known. And we must dissolve for the unknowable to be the case. By the case, I again mean the first person identity of the body. When I say truth must be the case, or the unknowable must be the case, it means that it is now from where what one is identifying as, or it is identifying as you, I should say. The body is the so essentially what we're talking about is, because you're asking, like, why should we do this? What is the program? Well, the program should be that the body is the knowable, the physical, and that the mind is not a product of the body, that the mind is the unknowable, is truth. This is the merging of timelessness and time. This is the merging of, that. The two streams. So basically I'm saying this is the conscious merging of the two streams, which are unconsciously already merged. Truth already transcends and includes us, but we can and need to be self-aware as truth, not just influenced by it or understand it in some theoretical, rational, manipulatable way. So I don't dismiss their experiences. I maintain that there are not, by the way, hey, how about kudos to me for writing some of this down for you? I actually went the distance here. So I don't dismiss their experiences. I maintain that they are not truth. They originate within the field of universal consciousness, the toy box of mind, if you will. Any beings you meet there are, to one degree or another, still asleep. Any experience you have there is, to one degree or another, still the dream. One eye open is still half asleep, if I may quote myself from Urgency. Therefore, the totality of what a human being is, or what existence itself is, will never be found there, no matter what entity is telling you to take dictation. No matter how interesting the scenario or loving the afterlife. To be clear, saying these things are partial or illusions, that kind of talk, when I say that, I mean it, again, in the context of, so is this physical reality also an illusion? Afterlives may be this real, but this is still not really real, is it? It's inevitable, but it isn't real. And so it might be, and so it might as well be. It's inevitable, but it isn't real, and so it might as well be real. There's your paradox, real elegantly, explained by one formless awareness being all forms, because that's what it means for one to exist. That said, I think the appeal of a Tom Campbell is symptomatic of the computer-obsessed age we live in. We call it the information age. He says reality isn't materially based, it's information-based. And then he stares blankly into the camera and dryly explains it like a robot. That speaks to so many of us, not because it's true, but because we are dead inside and love being fed answers that sound logical. We think they expand and evolve us the same way parables did in a different time and place, except even lazier because you don't have to do the work of deciphering his meaning. You just have to stay awake long enough for him to wrap it up. His meditation, which sparked his journey that brought him to this theory, is not real meditation. Real meditation is what occurs in the cessation of thought. All the meditations we do from India to Tibet to San Fernando Valley are thought suppressing other thoughts to achieve a very limited quiet space that is mistaken for silence with a capital S. In this space, if you meet other chattering beings, will you be surprised if they're you? Will you be surprised if they at least don't have a handle on reality much more than you do, but enough that they can teach you the little bit extra and then you can be stuck where they are, a master of more restive sleep? And that's where I think Tom Campbell is. He goes on. 4. I was wondering if you had read the book Who's in Charge by Michael Gazzaniga? That sounds horrible. I hope it's not that one. I was listening to that audiobook and it's explained... By the way, no, I've never heard of him or it. I was listening to that audiobook and its explanation of split brain experiment where it shows that the left brain and right brain operating independently but with very different abilities, and that a central motor reasons, in quotes, after the fact. Well after these subbrains have made the body do something. It's fascinating. There's a video from Joe Scott on YouTube, The Surgery That Proves There Is No Free Will, that talks about it. When I read it, I was thinking of when you talked about Kundalini and how it let you go. If you let go, your body will take over and animate itself. It sounds from that book that if one had an ability or a physical issue where the quote-unquote monitor would turn off, then the raw brain parts could animate the body on their own in ways we can't reason. Is that something you've considered? I assume you might have been followed up by a neurologist. I have never been followed up by a neurologist. The closest I ever got to anything was just after this Kundalini stuff initially started happening. I was like, oh my God, I should contact universities anon and let them know that there is something here. I didn't know about Kundalini when I don't think, when I was contacting them. I was just like, wow, look what else we are. Somebody in science needs to study this. I'll be the guinea pig. And nobody took me up on it, and I probably sounded crazy or, amateur or whatever, just like writing to these people. But nobody ever got back to me. But I did see that like transcendental meditators and various types like that have been studied scientifically. So they knew about this anyway. So what do they need me for? But no, I've never. You're asking if I might have been followed up by a neurologist as if one might have contacted me? No. If you're asking, have I contacted one because maybe I was worried about something? No, I was never worried about that. But in ways we can't reason, is that something I've considered? No. I've never heard of the book or any of that. But I would say that this is all very, again, you're trying to keep this a material thing, and it's not all that. But I would say that the thing that I have entertained, and that I think is true, is that the body does have its own natural language that it needs to speak for optimal health, and Kundalini speaks that language. So I wouldn't say Kundalini is a part of my raw brain that the monitor turns off and it starts going or whatever. I think there are other ways to have what are called kriyas in Sanskrit, which are the spontaneous movements. There are other ways for those to happen. There are other ways for the body's natural language to speak. So I don't know that that's necessarily purely a function of Kundalini. But it's a big one, for sure. He says, you joked about this looking like being possessed, but my point is that book talks about the brain being composed of multiple, very specialized mini-brains that connected to the body and muscle directly, kind of like we have multiple people inside us, but these parts are fully working people. In the book, it is speculated the human consciousness is an illusion that is the result of all these parts working together, as opposed to having a central brain. Okay, whatever. When I was a kid, I used to think that the Rice Krispies guys from the commercials were living in a control center in my brain and pulling levers, and that they were controlling me. So, is that what we're talking about here? I mean, no, ask me when I was 5. Sure, this makes total sense. Now, not so much. I apologize for the length of this. I'm unable to write shorter emails. Come on, dude. No, you're not. You chose to write a long email. What you I think you mean to say is, I had all this stuff I needed to get out, and I don't care about your time. What you need to do is waste your life reading this and responding to it. I'm just kidding. But come on, you could have written shorter if you wanted to. I don't have a problem with the length of it, though. As long as it's coherent, I don't have a problem with lengthy emails. I hope some of this can help you generate future content on your YouTube. Voila. P.S. CAPTCHA is broken for me on ourundoing.com, which is my website. Contact page. Yeah. Everything's broken. If ourundoing.com is good for anything, if not waking you up, it's good for frustrating you with how broken it is. All right, that's everything. This has probably gone longer than I intended. My apologies. I hope that answered some things. Maybe play it back in slow motion. It'll sound like I've answered things. I don't know. In a thoughtful way. If no one has any questions, I don't see any chat. No one's responded to me in the chat, so I don't know if this chat is even working. Maybe it isn't. But if it is, I'll give you a second here to ask questions, because I see that there's a time delay. I don't think you do have questions. I don't think it's working. I don't think it's on. How you like them apples? Screw it. I'm gone. Okay. Thank you for listening. Thank you for paying attention. If anyone has any more questions, if I have infuriated anyone, please write to my broken website, ourundoing.com, and maybe I'll see it, maybe I won't. All right. Goodbye, and thanks again.